What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant the Podcast, Tim. We're in a world, Tim.
Oh, God. This is always a great way to start.
We're in a world where we're about to see some new footage for DC Fandome. I know we're going to talk about it later, but I'm very excited. Tim.
You are way too excited.
I know. I'm really excited.
The trailer was very uneventful.
No,
really.
but we know what we're getting, and I'm looking forward to.
You mean for what's coming?
Right, not the trailer itself.
Okay,
we know
yeah.
what I meant is we're getting a second trailer for the Batman and Black Adam. We're getting a lot of stuff. We'll talk about it later, but
As you can
I'm
tell,
excited.
We've been talking about this before we started rolling. So what's up, Variant Nation? Welcome to the show.
I'm gonna say it's a good time to be a comic book fan. It's New York Comic Con weekend. You know,
we were talking about this just before we roll, and Arris is still really jacked up. He's ready to rock. He's ready to go on DC Fandome.
Yeah, and there's lots of fun to be had. Lots of theories, Tim.
There's a lot
we've
of
been talking
things
about them, possibilities, but I feel like I'm going to be let down at least once for sure.
I think that your expectations are entirely too high. I worry for you come October 16th.
You know what I would say my expectations are really high for? The Flash, because Keaton. So I'm just like the kid in me is just
I don't think that's going to get squashed. You think they're
going to do it justice?
Yeah, I think that they're going to give us enough to it's going to continue to feed the expectations of that because of what we're getting in it.
Right.
Purely just the Keaton side. That alone, I think we're going to get even if they just it's like a 2.5 second flash of Michael Keaton in the back suit with maybe like the bat signal in the background or something. If they do, that's all it's going to take. And all of, DC Fandome is just going to go absolutely bat crap crazy.
What if they show like a glimpse of Affleck, like seeing him for the first time? Because obviously he's Batman as well.
Or the two going face to face.
But he's like, who are you? And Keaton just looks at him, I'm Batman. Dude,
I kind of don't even want them to do that. I want them to hold that for the movie because I'm going to be waiting for that. But could you, the bigger things would be if like he comes face to face with like, Superman, or they show that, Black Adam's in it, or, they bring in Shazam and there's like multiple things happening at the same time, or we see something really crazy like the introduction of the Green Lanterns into the mix or something like that. We don't know fully what the Flash is going to give us. That's the thing.
Apparently,
we're diving headlong.
I was going to say, I was like, we're just getting into it. Yeah,
you did this.
I did. I'm
fault.
really excited, and it's a week away. As of shooting this, we're a week out from Fandome. And you know what it is though
close.
too? It's just that Fandome last year, 2020, was so good.
Yeah,
like especially it being a virtual event, I was thoroughly shocked. I'm like, wow, this was like very well done on DC's side. I'm like, again, a lot of awesome announcements. That's where we got a lot of stuff we're still waiting for.
Yeah,
so like
true.
The Batman, the Gotham Knights, and
very true.
But this year, a lot of that stuff has been shot, so now we get footage.
It's going to be fun no matter what. There's they lined up, I think, an even stronger lineup this year than last year,
which says something.
Which is saying because last year was a lot of fun.
It was.
So at the bare minimum, especially for like, the Comic-Con starved, fans, side of fandom and geekdom, you've got New York Comic-Con going on right now, but it's very small, relatively speaking, to what New York Comic-Con typically is in the past. Same thing with San Diego Comic-Con's coming back in November, like on Thanksgiving weekend, which is bizarre.
It makes no sense. Everyone's like, so I'm supposed to not be with my family to go to Comic-Con?
I think they did that on purpose, though.
To reduce attendance?
Keep it very, very small, very intimate. They're putting in all kinds of protocols and stuff like that. So you're going to only have a very small group of people that go anyway. So it's not the same. It's not the same. However, DC Fandome gives everybody who is a fan of all these characters a place to where we can all kind of just participate in something. And we do it online, but it's still a lot of fun. It is not the same thing. We said that last year. It's not the same thing. It's missing that special element of everybody coming together, that community vibe. But there's still an element of it, and it is a lot of fun.
It's interesting to me that in a world where, New York Comic-Con is currently going on, San Diego Comic-Con is happening, obviously a little smaller than normal, but they're still going on, and Comic-Cons around the country are back. We just had Dallas Comic-Con here like 2 weeks ago.
Some of them are bigger than others.
Right. Yeah. But it's just interesting that they decided to still go virtual, instead of brick. So I wonder if it's always just going to, no matter if things go back to normal, when things go back to normal or not, if they're just going to stay virtual or not, or go, to a normal Comic-Con. I think it's going to stay virtual because it seems beneficial for them to give access to the entire world, and it's free.
Yeah.
And this year they've only expanded. Now it's on Twitch. You can watch it on Twitch. You can watch it on YouTube.
They actually expanded the footprint dramatically.
Yeah, a lot. So it's like I can only imagine what the online attendance is going to be this year.
The direction everything seems to be going, just like with comics. We've talked about it here on the show many times. We'll continue to talk about it. Everything just seems to be going very digital. Some of that, and everything, there's trade-offs with everything, right? I say that all the time. There's always trade-offs. One of the big trade-offs, it's kind of like with the, this trend of like movie theaters going away. They're still there. They're trying to get them going again and stuff like that. And there's a lot of people that really love getting back to the theaters, but you're still sensing this vibe of like, it's not going to be the same going forward. You're seeing movie theaters like, Warner Brothers still keeping their entire slate on their streaming service.
Well, I feel like they can't go because they promised everyone. They're like, they can't go back for at least this year.
Yeah, they're not going to undo it. They can't. They already did it.
2022 will be interesting, though. I don't think they're going to do that again for 2022.
Yeah, we'll see. But even with that, the attendance at the theaters has not been the same. It's been much better than they anticipated, right now, but it's still not quite the same. The question remains, like, will it ever go back? Because they're continuing to feed the streaming services and wanting to do that increasingly. They've already redone their contracts with the theaters to keep, the amount of time that the films land in the theaters exclusively is really short now.
It's 40 days, right?
30 and 45 days, depending on the size of the film. So you've got that going on, and you're just seeing this kind of like an overall movement. I just remember happening.
Growing up, like seeing movies, like Batman Returns when I was young, and it not coming out on VHS or home video. It's like a year
6 months
later or something like that, or like the following Christmas, because I guess that movie, takes place during Christmas. So it's funny now where you only have to, you see a movie in theaters and like 2-3 months later you could have it on digital or Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's totally different. And now it's like 30 days. For a lot of these films, it's like 30 days, 45 days.
I like that, though.
I think, especially in the age of pirating, you know what I mean? Digital pirating, where this stuff winds up out there anyway.
It's true.
I think that they're realizing, like, the faster you can get it out there,
the faster we'll make money off of it.
Yeah, the more you're going to make profit on that. But, it's like, my point is that there's trade-offs with everything. And one of the big things that as we move more and more digital and more kind of into our isolated little corners, one of the big things we're losing is that human community aspect, where we're actually getting together and interacting with one another. And, there's a lot to be said for that. We won't get into that here, obviously, now. But there's trade-offs with everything, but I definitely think that the direction is, and in these companies especially, they're looking to corporations are always going to look to reduce overhead wherever they can and make things as broadly marketable and cheap as possible.
DC Fandome is definitely a lot cheaper for Warner Brothers and DC than flying all these A-listers and stuff out to a Comic-Con.
And that's not to say they don't spend money on it. They're obviously putting quite a good amount of money into DC Fandome.
It's just, you can't compare that to like renting out the freaking like Javits Center or something like that, and all these flights and stuff.
And even the companies that are involved in sponsoring it. I mean, when you're doing like a Comic-Con, like a San Diego Comic-Con, let's just use it as an example. These Comic-Cons, or these companies rather, when they're sponsoring something at a Comic-Con, I mean, the amount of money, we've seen it up close. We've talked to these people. The amount of money they spend on hotels and food and all of the different practical elements of making the pavilions and
some of those bigger booths are like hundreds of thousands of dollars, six figures, easy.
Unbelievable amount of effort and time, and that's not even including the amount of time that and money they put into the actual design and the build, and because all of that is people they're paying to do all of that stuff, and the people that run them, and on and on and on you go.
It's crazy. I love how we're still kind of on the DC Fandome.
Yeah, we went to 3 different directions already.
But we're going to bring it all the way back to Venom.
Yeah, well, we're going to touch on several different things today. So we're going to touch on Venom. We're going to review Venom, What If finale, and we're going to talk a lot more about DC Fandome. So, but you initiated a broad-based conversation on the digital marketplace.
I did. And there's the Marvel just announced that they're working on a new spin-off series for WandaVision, which we'll talk about a little later.
Yeah.
There's not much to say about it, but we got to at least mention it.
Yeah, we'll mention it. All right, so Venom, we saw it. What'd you think?
Spoilers first and foremost.
Oh yeah,
spoilers
galore
for anyone who hasn't seen it. So
So past this moment,
yes,
there is no complaining.
Yes, spoilers for Venom. Getting right into it, I was very meh. And the more I sit on it, I'm like, yeah, like I didn't not like it, but I didn't like really like it. If that makes sense. No, it was like okay. It was okay for me. Venom is one of my favorite Marvel characters, which is a given because he's a Spider-Man villain now. He's pretty much a hero or anti-hero. But when he was first introduced, he was villain, right? He was meant to be a new bad for Spider-Man. So him being one of my top, I would say top 3 Spider-Man villains, even though again he's turned more into an anti-hero in recent years, but I'm gonna say villain for the sake of this conversation.
Fair enough.
Top 3. I was, I'm really attached to this character and expect certain things growing up with this character, because that's another thing. This is one of those characters where it wasn't created in like the 40s or 50s or 60s. Like I was reading comic books when this character was introduced. So this is like he's a 90s character, right? This is right in my wheelhouse. That's when I was growing up reading comics. So I'm more attached to him in that sense too, where I was there for his birth with Todd McFarlane and gang and that modern age of Marvel where it kind of all imploded because of sales and crazy, skeptics thinking that they're going to make money hoarding first appearances of characters. Anyway,
there was a little bit of bitterness in there.
All that to say, I just don't like. See, what's weird is I didn't mind the first movie. I actually kind of liked the first movie, but with this one, I think they just cranked everything up too much to where now I didn't, because I feel bad saying it, but I guess I kind of tolerated it the first time around. I'm like, yeah, it's fun, whatever. And it was at that level, whatever. But this one has just ramped everything up to the point where it's just Venom and Brock's relationship was very much just a jokey, like slapstick comedy at times. And Venom kind of sounded like Cookie Monster to me a lot of times, and I just couldn't get over it. Like, even in the trailer where he's singing and stuff like that while making breakfast, and the whole, like, their whole relationship is just trying to constantly make jokes. And that's fine. I love that stuff. Donny Cates even does that in his most current Venom run, which was fantastic and just concluded a few months back. Like, obviously there should be that lightheartedness and a little jokes here and there, but not like the constant, bickering between the two all the time. And I don't know. I just wasn't feeling the way Venom was portrayed. I'm sure a lot of other Venom purists out there, people who just have read a lot of Venom comics, probably would, get what I'm trying to say here.
You were much more disappointed coming out of the theater than I thought you were going to be.
Yeah, like, because another thing is, let's say that was the only thing, but then what they did with Carnage, I felt like there was no real story there. Like, what was the story there? He got arrested. His girlfriend from when he was little is also arrested. He wants to free her and marry her. That's the story. Like, there was nothing. And then even the way, like, Carnage looked cool, I guess, but I didn't even like how he was like twice the size of Venom, where in the comics he's actually smaller than Venom. He's like Spider-Man size, just with the symbiote over him. So that was weird how they flipped it to make Venom. I guess they made Carnage a lot bigger than Venom to make him seem more imposing, where even, again, you see in the trailer, where Venom's like, crap, a red one. Where it's like, no, like, that's literally your spawn, and you're still bigger than him. Like, that's the cool thing about Venom, where he's usually the biggest symbiote. Yeah. And there's a lot of other ones and stuff, but he's usually one of the biggest ones. So I thought that was weird that they made Carnage bigger than him. And even, I love Woody Harrelson. Love Woody Harrelson. He's a fantastic actor. I don't think anyone could deny that. But just because you're a fantastic actor, I don't think that means you could play any role.
No. I mean, that's true for pretty much everyone.
Right, yeah. So, and for me, I just didn't see him as Cletus Cassidy. It didn't really work for me. I guess I wasn't really buying it that much. You actually said it after the movie when we were talking outside. Forget the guy's name, but the dude who played Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad, I think he would have been, because you said that, I was like, I agree. He would have been a really good Cletus Cassidy, just dye his hair red. He's got that, because Woody Harrelson doesn't have that vibe like that. I feel like when you think of Cletus Cassidy, especially reading the comics, he's like kind of a lanky, pale, redheaded guy who just has, you just look at him and you're like, oh yeah, you're kind of a creep, right? And
wow, I'm sure he's very thankful to hear that.
No, but the guy from, the guy who plays Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad, he could pull that off. Like, he has that vibe about him where
Without
it's
a
just
doubt.
like, kind of like Joaquin Phoenix.
Mhm.
Like the only reason why his portrayal as a Joker was that amazing was because like, oh, you're probably a little crazy in real life. You know what I mean? Like there's probably a little something off right there. Like
He
but-
definitely goes into that category.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So all that combined where I wasn't really feeling Carnage that much. The story was kind of weak for me. And then me not even digging the Venom Brock relationship. I was just like, it's okay. Because cool action scenes, you know, it was fun to see Carnage. That's another thing. I love Tom Hardy. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. I'd probably put him top 10, top 20, right? I love Tom Hardy. So that's another thing that kind of disappointed me. I'm like, oh man. Like I said it before, I think Tom Hardy would be a dope Wolverine, like in the MCU.
Yeah, I think that was echoed pretty much universally.
Yeah, he'd be really, really cool.
Too late.
Yeah. But for me, and I would think most people, whether you love the movie or not, the best part of the movie by far was the end credit scene, which we could talk
Obviously,
about
yeah.
for freaking ever.
That was a highlight. Of the film.
I guess we should save that though until you give your thoughts, and then we'll go into that because then we're just going to go
Yeah,
on a
because that's
tangent.
going to be the biggest part.
Yeah, but everyone who's seen it knows that end credit scene that opens up a big wormhole.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
We were
We'll
kind of
get into that
expecting
in a
it.
second.
Yeah. Anyway,
So-
what did you think?
Well, I was not nearly as disappointed as you. I went into this, I guess. I guess I should say is right off the bat, like when I saw the runtime was just over an hour and a half.
That was weird too.
That's with credits.
Mhm.
So that means that the actual runtime of the film itself was going to be probably around the 120 mark, maybe 125.
Mhm.
Once I saw that, I was like, oh, we're getting not much story here.
Mhm.
So, you know, because they have to have time for the action and all that kind of stuff. This is just kind of a spectacle of a
Yeah.
film. So that was not a good sign for any kind of story or character development for these characters and them rolling into anything more broad.
Mhm.
At least anything significant, I should say. Because, you know, I'm thinking the first film didn't really give us much.
No.
It was kind of just an introduction to the concept of Venom, where he came from, you know, and Eddie Brock, where he came from, and then them kind of coming together.
Did you think the villain in the first movie was way better? I actually thought the villain had a more compelling.
Well, there was just
feud.
more to it. Yeah,
it was
the
a more-
first film was longer. It was, you know,
Yeah.
it felt more substantive, you know, for what it is. But the funny thing is that I liked the first one far less than you did.
That is fun. We were kind of swapped.
Yeah, we were swapped. I came out of the first one where I was just like, it had its moments, but overall I was very disappointed. And I did not like the interaction with Venom and Eddie
Mm-hmm.
in the first film. Having said that, going into the second film, you know, I'm like, okay, this is in the hands of Andy Serkis now. You know, Tom intentionally brought him in as executive producer to let him do his thing. So I was very curious. I'm a huge Andy Serkis fan. Honestly, I'm like, who isn't? The man is a national treasure. Well, for England and us. But anyway, so, you know, I was very excited to see what he was going to do with it. But then I saw the runtime, and so I went in kind of with that in mind, like, okay, temper your expectations here in terms of what, like any kind of a broader story that you're going to get. Because even if it's fun, it's not going to be very substantive. It can't be in that short of a time frame. I mean, that's not much longer than most of the TV shows we watch.
It's true.
Now. So I was already kind of like a little bit tempered, and that's probably what saved me. But also because I had already kind of made my peace with how Tom Hardy was doing the relationship between him and Venom. So I was expecting it, and I went in just already kind of prepared to that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to enjoy it. And if it's, you know, see what he does with it. And in this movie, they just added a lot more humor.
A lot.
It was a lot more humor. And I actually laughed. I laughed quite a bit. I thought it was, there was some really funny moments.
None of it didn't feel forced for you?
No, because the first time it was.
So we were literally flipped.
Yeah, because I was already ready for it. I
Okay.
knew what it was.
Right.
So it was just
But it was
the
so
same.
much more.
It was a lot more. It was definitely, this movie was entirely about, you know, Venom and Eddie's relationship and them really kind of settling in with each other. Like even his relationship with Anne.
Yeah.
That whole thing was very sidebarred. I thought like the way they hated Dan,
it was really funny.
Was really funny, and by the end, Venom is like, "Hey, Dan, you take care too." I thought that
was monster voice.
Yeah, it's very unlike, but it's kind of like the Batman voice in a way, right? It's like everybody's got their take on the Batman voice. Some people do it better, some people do it really bad. And, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay.
And it's Tom Hardy doing Venom.
Yeah,
it's
Tom Hardy playing both characters. I actually enjoyed watching Tom Hardy do that, play that role, and do both sides, knowing, because, as a filmmaker, I'm sitting there knowing, okay, he's just acting this scene out alone.
Of course.
He's pretending that something's there.
You mean Venom's not there?
So I was, but there's no one to play off of, and he's going through this motion. And I thought that was fun. I thought he did a serviceable job with it. The big disappointment for me, so I'll finish that by saying, everything with Venom and Eddie, it was the exact same as what we got in the first film, so I was ready for it, so it didn't bother me this time, and I actually laughed quite a bit at some of the interactions. That to the side, the rest of the film, all of the stuff with Carnage, Woody Harrelson, I was very much, when we saw him at the end of the first film, it was like, woof.
The Ronald McDonald hair?
Oh, yeah, the whole Ronald McDonald deal. It was like, oh boy, what's happening here?
It was just such an odd, because obviously he was cast a long time ago.
Right, so Andy Serkis this is what, they had already done it. So there was no going back. So I was already like, that was crazy. But then we saw they got rid of the crazy Ronald McDonald hair, and it was like, okay, maybe this will be, they're going to fix it. They'll temper it and they'll fix it and it'll be good. But again, when I saw that runtime, I was like, this is going to be rough for you to roll out. You're introducing Carnage. Carnage. The subtitle of the film is "Let There Be Carnage." And you're gonna give us something that's not much longer than a standard, HBO television show. That's rough.
Yeah, I mean,
to be able to do that.
That's the runtime of a family film or a kids film, just because kids have shorter attention spans.
Game of Thrones finale, right? It's not enough time to because again, these characters and these stories are supposed to be, stories that are inside a broader universe that they're developing and unfolding, and especially as we get to the end credit scene or the mid credit scene, we know for sure that's what they're doing. But
that's another thing that makes me angry. I think though that now whatever they're doing here, is gonna go over somewhere else.
So that is what really landed the hardest for me as far as the disappointment side was everything with Carnage. And again, spoilers, Carnage dies. Woody Harrelson was not a right casting, in my opinion. I think you agree with that. Yep. He was miscast as Cletus Cassidy. A lot of the performance felt just off. I won't say more than that because I really like Woody Harrelson as an actor. I think that he's an absolutely great actor in the right roles. I don't think this was the right role for him,
for sure,
in my opinion.
True Detective is a shining example of that.
He's had an incredible career. So there's a myriad of different performances that he's had that were just tremendous.
White Man Can't Jump. Dude, I love that freaking movie. I don't even care.
That's actually a fun movie.
Yeah, and he's in it with Blade, Wesley Snipes.
Yeah. I mean, you're really going deep. That's a deep cut right there. But in this particular role, it was definitely a miscast in my view. But the bigger element, even more and beyond the miscast, was there was just no story. And then it was even worse with Shriek and his relationship with Shriek. It was just it just felt so flippantly done. And it was just kind of thrown on screen. We didn't get, there was the most minuscule amount of backstory that you could possibly do to introduce or to have a character in a film.
Yeah.
And then they had these very brief moments of, okay, we're out, we're going to create some chaos. It was extremely short. Venom comes in. They make a very small big deal about, oh, it's a red one. And, he fights. Long story short, Venom wins with the help of, some friends, Ann and Dan, and one, what is it? Was it one other person, right? The cop,
yeah.
What's
Mulligan.
His name? Mulligan, yeah, who ends up at the end. That was another weird one. I'll say that in a second. But Anyway, long story short, Venom winds up winning, and he just bites, Cletus Cassidy and Venom's head off, eats his head, and Cletus Cassidy and Carnage is gone. That's it. Done.
Is he though? Is he?
I mean, you could argue no, because Venom literally eats him.
Yeah, but as long from the comic books,
yeah, they can do anything.
As long as there's one trace of blood left of Carnage, he can reform.
They can do anything. So, but it was just so uneventful, and it was just so anticlimactic, just across the board.
Well, that's kind of what.
So the movie ended. It was just like, okay, and then, and this is the thing I was going to say there with Mulligan, right at the end there, because we know that he becomes Toxin in comics, right at the very end, completely unexplained, no rhyme or reason that I saw. I don't know if you guys out there, there's some other thing floating around as to why all of a sudden he became Toxin, but all of a sudden his eyes start glowing blue and he becomes Toxin. Or he starts to, or something's happening with
even
him.
Though it looks like Shriek.
Yeah. The same thing with Shriek is like the whole, I just didn't get it. The casting for her was really weird. It was the performance, the voice that she was doing.
It's like she's trying to be creepy, but it's not really creepy.
Yeah, it was not creepy in the least. And all I could think of was her character from Pirates of the Caribbean.
The end of the earth.
Yeah, I can't remember the character's name, but
she was great in that movie, though.
Yeah, she was awesome in that. But that's all I could think of the entire time. But yeah, just the whole thing was just very uneventful, very shallow in the terms of its character and story development. There was pretty much none. It was just kind of thrown on. It felt very thrown together, uneventful, anticlimactic, and then the whole thing with Mulligan at the end, where it was just like, where did that even come from? Like, why all of a sudden is her eyes blue?
Everyone knew, anyone who has read the comics knew that eventually they were gonna. You don't put Mulligan in there, Toxin. The guy becomes Toxin without them doing something.
But give us a reason for it.
Yeah, the way they made his eyes glow was weird because again, it was very like Shriek. I'm like, that's really really weird, but. While you were thinking about it, why it probably angered me more is because Riot had a more fleshed out conflict with Venom than Carnage did. And 100%. Carnage, you could say, is just as popular as Venom in a lot of ways. People, they kind of go hand in hand, right? And he was the first offspring of Venom. So it's just like, how are you not gonna do my boy justice?
And as Carnage a villain, is awesome. I don't know if you feel this way. And as a villain for Carnage and even Spider-Man, as a villain for Venom and Spider-Man, rather, for me, Carnage is in terms of his story and his behavioral patterns, he's like a Joker type.
Yeah.
So it's like you're just completely jacking up this opportunity to have your Joker of this universe and do a whole bunch of really cool stuff because it's a lot of Cletus Cassidy's story is very disturbing. I'm like, some of the stuff that we've covered on the show, it's just like, whoa. Well, it's disturbing.
That was one of the things I kind of liked. One of the things I did like about the movie is where they did the animation of his flashback of his origin. They decided to do it that way, where he pushed his grandmother down the stairs in a wheelchair. That's straight out of the comic books. Where he takes a power drill through a puppy's head. That's straight out of the comic books. So they did a lot of stuff like that. But it's like, that's kind of another thing too, where a lot of Carnage fans were like, I don't know, because in order to do Carnage right, you have to do him R. Inherently, the character is an R-rated character. This character was never meant for a young audience. He was created as an R character. I mean, literally, his origin is he puts power drills through puppies' heads and kills his grandmother.
Right. Which they touch on.
They touch on. But I was hoping...
They just didn't get that graphic.
Right, but I was hoping, because you could still do stuff like that in a PG-13 way, like the Jaws effect, where you could allude to he did something messed up, but it's off screen and you still get the PG-13 rating.
Right.
And they didn't really do much like that. Maybe once or twice where, he's probably cutting people or taking a head off and you just see Carnage just shut off screen. But it wasn't... Again, there was nothing... The movie's called Let There Be Carnage.
Exactly.
Let there be... And there wasn't that much carnage.
There was not. No, there was in the end... There was very
both
little
in the
carnage.
Literal sense and actual gory sense.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to I don't think it needed to be very gory or anything like that. I don't think that with the Carnage story, especially the initial one, I don't think it needed to be anything like that. I don't think it needed to be like this, gratuitous gore fest, of a horror type movie. I think they could have gone something very Joker-esque, and I'm talking about Joaquin Phoenix's Joker-esque.
Creepy and off.
Very creepy, very psychological thriller with it.
For sure.
But the problem was that's not the tone they set for Venom right out of the gate with the first film. They set a very popcorny, like kind of circus environment. I guess you could say MCU type environment, especially the direction that the MCU has been going on the back half and more recently. I'll touch on some of that as we get into what if even. But so the tone wasn't there. It would have been a radical shift. I still think they could have gotten away with it. But, clearly that's not the tone that Tom Hardy's wanting for the characters. He's kind of dictating a lot of that. This is kind of his.
Because they could have done like a soft boot in the sense where like it's still a continuation, but almost like a tone shift.
Yes.
Lots of franchises do that.
I would have loved to have seen this go almost like a psychological thriller.
Especially, I thought it was kind of going to have that before we started getting trailers and stuff, especially when they brought on Andy Serkis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, it's going to probably be a little darker. And it should be because you have Carnage in it now. So, I don't know. Overall, again, I just thought the movie was okay.
Yeah. I will say I still enjoyed it.
Okay.
I still came out like feeling like I was entertained. I came out, I was like, it was short, but it was fun. I had some fun with it. It was a good time at the theater. I knew going in, don't go in expecting any kind of huge story. So I guess that probably saved me a little bit more than you.
The last thing I will say is, the part where Cletus Cassidy steals the muscle car and he's driving around the city, like that whole. I guess that's like halfway through the movie. That I'm like, oh, you know what this reminds me of? Like the
Thelma and Louise.
No, like the tone and everything they're doing with that, and even the way the cinematography is kind of like the Blade sequels, 2 and 3. And everyone, I think most people would agree the first Blade, it's good. People love it. Obviously, it's why I got sequels. But then as they got 2 and 3, it started getting a little, and it was reminding me of that. And I'm like, oh, that's why they're in this kind of tone wheelhouse where it's like a comic book movie, but it's like they're doing weird stuff with it.
Yeah. But the mid-credit scene.
Leaps and bounds. That's a reason for the ticket alone.
And if we're being honest, we went into this, and I think everyone did because it Tom Hardy, it came out, Tom Hardy was telling everyone, please don't talk about the mid-credit scene. Please don't leak it. So we went in just waiting for that. That was like one of the most anticipated parts of this going in. So it did not disappoint.
No, everyone was speculating like it's Doctor Strange, it's Spider-Man, and
and we found
out
it's maybe both.
Maybe.
So the mid-credit scene, obviously it shows Venom, Eddie Brock sitting in a hotel room in what looks like Costa Rica or something to this effect.
Island.
Some island out in the middle of nowhere in hiding because he's been exposed as Venom.
That's another part. One of the things I did like about the movie, how their whole thing was like, we are the lethal protector.
That
was fun. And it's a throwback to the comic book.
Yeah. I thought little stuff like that. But anyway, it shows them out on a remote island in, somewhere in South Central America or something like that. And he's laying in bed, and Venom begins to tell Eddie that he's got 80 billion years of universal knowledge built up, and that he couldn't, because Eddie's like, are you hiding something from me? And Venom says, it's too much for your puny human brain sort of a thing, but I'll give you a small little taste. And he's like, are you ready, Eddie? And then you think something's happening, and then the TV starts to freak out, and there's this huge glitch that happens, and you go from all of a sudden from night to day. They're still in a hotel room, but the hotel room is completely different, and now it's a high-end hotel. Looks like you're in, at some high-end resort in Cabo. And it's something weird like
because the way they play it is you don't know if Venom did that by unleashing the knowledge on him or what's going on, because there was just like this weird the whole screen shakes and a weird shift happens. And you see something happened
until Eddie says, "What did you do?" And Venom says, "That wasn't me."
Right.
And that's when you see on the television, you hear first J. Jonah Jameson announcing that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, the end scene from Spider-Man Far From Home that we all saw, where Peter Parker gets revealed as Spider-Man and all that kind of stuff. And Venom and Eddie are watching it on television, and it reveals that Venom, Eddie Brock, this Venom and Eddie Brock are now in the same universe as Tom Holland's, the MCU's Peter Parker Spider-Man. So wherever Peter Parker Spider-Man ended up at the end of Far From Home is where now Venom is. But my thing is, and this is my question, is does that mean that Tom Holland's Spider-Man is no longer in the same universe? Or what, at the end of Far From Home was no longer in the same universe as his original Avengers team? Or did Venom get moved? Or both? Who knows? But clearly, the way that it happened, I mean, it seems like it happened in conjunction with either the snap or the whatever happens with Doctor Strange.
I think Doctor Strange
in the upcoming No Way Home.
I think when he shifts everything in No Way Home is when everything would happen. But it's like happening at the same. So you have to assume that the end of Far From Home and this end credit scene is happening at the same exact time, right? So which is pretty crazy. But it's like, I don't know, man. There's so many theories like to go on with it. Where again, is it Doctor Strange doing it? Did this happen with the snap? It's just like, I don't know. The thing that's like perplexing me is Venom going to be in the MCU by the end of No Way Home, or is Spider-Man going to be in the Sonyverse? Because I mean, the movie's called No Way Home. Yep. So you would think just like Spider-Man Homecoming, they named that because Spider-Man's coming home to Marvel. Yep. No Way Home means, Spider-Man's not coming home. He's back. He's gone. He's gone again. He's gone. And every movie's had a home theme for whatever reason. Yeah. So it's also kind of like, did you plan this? Did you know you only had 3 movies with Spider-Man? Which would be something, right? If they kind of knew that all along. Like, you got 3. We'll give you a trilogy. And they did. Back.
They did know. They did know how the length of the contract.
Did they know the movie? Did they know it was 3 movies?
Well, they knew they had a set contract from the get. And then they extended it by 1.
But he's also been, because it's 3 Spider-Man movies, and then he's been in Civil War.
I think it was a 5-film contract initially. It was 4 or 5, and then they added 1. So it went from 5 to 6 or 4
Endgame and
to
Infinity
5.
War have to count. Same thing with Civil War,
yeah,
right?
Every appearance counts.
So this is going to be his 6th appearance total. So 2 Avengers movies, Civil War, and 3 Spider-Man.
5 to 6.
But anyway, it's just like, come on, man, don't go over to the Sonyverse. Like, I'd rather Venom come over, be in Feige's hands, tweak him a bit, and make him the Venom I know he can be.
You have not wanted to face the music on this for because a long time.
And I hope that if that is the case, Tom Holland's like, awesome, but I've already been Spider-Man for 6 movies. I'm out. I'm going to go do other things.
That's very possible.
Because I would almost rather that than to see the possible de-evolution of Tom Holland Spider-Man in the Sonyverse. So as of late, the stuff they've been doing with the Spider-Man character, like Venom, I would assume Morbius is going to be very, just kind of like in the not amazing category as well.
Well, don't knock it till you try.
Yeah, no, I would assume. Again, like you said, I'll hold all final judgment. But if,
there's a track
record there, right? But it's weird because then they do stuff like Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, which is freaking amazing. That's like, you could argue or even say that's the best Spider-Man movie ever made to date.
You could easily make that argument.
Right? So it's weird. So I don't know. Maybe they figured it out with live-action Spider-Man if they bring Tom Holland over. But I'm not willing to gamble, as I guess is what it is. I'm like, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think an interesting thought would be because
I do like the first 2 Raimi films too, and that is Sony.
You do.
I do like the first 2, obviously.
And you're contradicting yourself here.
In what sense? I mean, that's why I kind of said I don't want to say that, because in recent years, so it's weird. It's like the Sony Raimi stuff, the first 2, love. That's like my childhood right there. I love those 2. They're up there with like the Burton movies almost for me, the Tim Burton movies. But then we got into this weird like, now Marvel's doing all that stuff. We gotta do something. Let's do Venom. Let's do more. And this new current trying to compete with the MCU hasn't been on par. Let's just say.
Yeah. I think that ultimately in the long run, this is going to.
Am I missing a Marvel Sony movie besides Venom? They've only done the Venom one, right? They shot Morbius.
Well,
but it's
they've
not
done
out.
just the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
They're working on Kraven the Hunter.
Yep, Kraven the Hunter. They've got well, I mean, technically all of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies have been Sony, but
yes,
technically. They're MCU.
Yeah, that
So
was
it's-
the
it
clause.
was
In the
spearheaded
clause,
by
it was like,
Feige, yeah.
you make it, but put our logo on it.
That's basically it. So, but yeah, I mean, because you went from the Raimi Spider-Man films, Tobey Maguire, to then we got Andrew Garfield, and that went.
That was Sony too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Anything Spider-Man.
Okay, so I knew that's what I was missing. Yeah. So,
Okay, so you're forgetting those?
yeah,
I thought you meant
right.
I thought you meant more recent after Andrew Garfield.
but that was going on at the MCU.
Oh, yes.
And I remember being like, why isn't Spider-Man in the MCU? Because I think that was still in phase 1, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the Andrew Garfield, the first one, I don't know.
It went off the
them.
rails.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I liked them, but I'm a Holland fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's such different vibes, all three of them, really. I mean, the first one was very like Spider-Man and Friends, classic Spider-Man vibe. That Saturday morning cartoon.
The Andrew Garfield one?
No. Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi.
Oh,
the first
okay,
Spider-Man
okay.
films.
Yeah.
That was especially the first one. The first one and the second one, I think. The third one went off the rails completely. That's a whole. I view the third one as like its own thing because so much was going on wrong there between Raimi, the studio.
You didn't like emo Tobey Maguire?
Oh my gosh, we
Spider-Man?
talked about it at great length not too long ago. So that was.
I'm just gonna.
Yes. I showed that. I said this before. I showed that to my kids, and my kids could not even believe what they were watching.
That's not even Raimi's fault. The studio did that. But
there
that's
was a whole conversation to itself. But the first two, the first one had like, it just reminded me of, you remember the Spider-Man ride in Universal Studios Florida?
Yeah, it's
in
a great
Islands
ride.
of Adventure.
Great ride.
When you walk through the queue,
Mm-hmm.
everything is like the Daily Bugle.
Yep.
Right? You're
And
walking through the
J. Jonah
J.
Jameson,
Jonah
yeah.
Jameson from the cartoons are on and stuff like that. And it just, the movie, the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film, reeked of that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what really made
great.
it fun
She's
when
great.
it came out in 2001, 2002. And the second one was, I thought it maintained that, but was an even better movie.
Power of the sun in the palm of your hands.
Doc Ock.
Yeah.
Alfred Molina, who is coming back for No Way Home, was so awesome. But the third one went off the rails. But then Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man films, they were so different in tone. I feel like Andrew Garfield, who really put his effort into it was just like a miscast for me. I just don't think that was the best casting for the character, but it just quickly went off the rails.
It's weird with the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man stuff. I have like a weird like love-hate relationship, if that makes any sense.
Was
like
it because of the Gwen Stacy thing?
No, I actually thought they handled Gwen Stacy pretty well. Just overall, the universe they made there, where there's lots of elements I liked, but there's lots of stuff I didn't like. Green Goblin in the second movie. I'm like, what? Why does he? I mean, I guess you're really trying to make him look like a goblin, because what's up with that hair and elf ears?
Weird. It was very weird. I would say the first one was okay for me. It was like, okay, it had some cool moments or whatever. The second one was rough.
Yeah,
it was rough.
What was it? The Rhino bit?
Yeah, well,
What
that
they did with
Electro.
That's right, man.
Dude, Electro was
Man, I kind of erased some of the stuff from my memory.
You did. You did.
How did I forget Jamie Foxx Electro? We even talk about it week to week.
But we went from that.
You didn't like the computer chip on the side of his head and how he was bright blue?
Even his whole bit, like it bordered on Jim Carrey's version of Edward Enigma.
Oh, okay. Batman Forever, Tim. Horrible movie, but it's amazing. Horrible, amazing movie.
Come on, have some self-respect.
That's nostalgia. I don't even care.
There is definitely some nostalgic fun to it if you're looking to
Tommy
just
Lee
blow
Jones,
a couple
Two-Face?
hours
Come on.
just make fun. But not make fun, but just laugh and just remember what the 90s were like.
Come on. Uma Thurman No, that's Batman
No, that's
Robin.
Batman
Yeah,
Robin.
now I'm
That's
getting,
woof.
have an ice day.
That's like Spider-Man 3, maybe worse. But we went from that Spider-Man with the whole Electro and all of that stuff that just went completely off the rails to Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. It's a huge dramatic shift from as terms of quality, actual depth of film, character. Tom Holland is perfect casting for Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man. So, it's definitely understandable for anyone who doesn't want to see that end. And it might not. Tom Holland might stay on and just stay with the character.
He doesn't have Iger there to protect him anymore, though.
He doesn't. Well, he doesn't anymore, period. But I think that Disney, or Kevin Feige more specifically, knew the most likely scenario is that we were going to have a limited time period with this character. So they had 2 plans in place. Sony, on the other hand, owns the film rights. They're having to share with Disney when they can really just go, you can lay the groundwork for something, set a tone in the MCU, get a whole bunch of people interested, and then we can start building other little pieces and then incorporate them down the line, and then we don't have to share the profits anymore. So I can understand where Sony's coming from. They're paying for that. They paid for those rights.
You know what's interesting to me that I feel like most people don't talk about is, so we got this post-credit scene, right? Or end credit scene for Venom 2, where we see Tom Holland, Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But literally, I believe 2019 or the beginning of 2020 is when we got that first Morbius trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that trailer, we see Michael Keaton
as Vulture,
who we know is in the MCU.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that like we're like, oh my God, when they told us this, literally
they already told us. Yeah.
But it's like, I want to know, because with the pandemic, everything got like moved around and blown up and moved around, right? Everything just got shuffled. So I want to know what the original plan was, because these Morbius is supposed to be out, Venom 2 is supposed to be out, like all these movies are supposed to be out. Craven probably would already have been shot by now.
Yeah.
Like all these movies were supposed to be out or shot at least. So it's like, what was the original plan there if you were showing us Michael Keaton Vulture in the Morbius teaser trailer? Also, there's a mural of Spider-Man, what looks like Sam Raimi Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, in the Morbius trailer as well. So it's like, what were they doing? And now giving us this Tom Holland bit where it's like you see I guess reality get changed, whether it's Doctor Strange or the snap or whatever it is, confirming that Venom now is in the same universe with Tom Holland. But what was the original goal there to introduce that with Keaton first? Like, how are they going to do that? What was the explanation going to be there? Because this was before we got the No Way Home trailer, before the Multiverse of Madness and all that. So, like, what was the original way of them doing this? Are they shifting now and redoing it? Was this even their original plan?
I mean, we're never going to know. I mean, not for a very long time, probably. Yeah. But I would say, I think it was always Sony's intention to get this back as soon as possible, to get it back into solely in their hands as soon as possible.
But again, do you think Tom Holland is going to stay and do it? Because he's already been Spider-Man for 6 movies. That's a lot.
That was the big question. But now he's in that end trailer. And Andy Serkis, he was in an interview and he was talking about how that whole the mid-credit scene there at the end was completely in flux. They were not sure if they were going to do it all the way up to the last minute before the film came out. They were just back and not before the film came out, but before they went into the final cuts of the film, they were not sure if that was going to go in the film or not. It was completely in flux, and so that means that they were still debating,
right? See,
and I think that that's because I think Marvel and the MCU wants to keep Spider-Man, so I think they're trying to figure out, can we make this work? I don't think Sony wants to do it. I don't think Sony wants it to work. I think Sony just wants to take it back so they don't have to share the profits and they can build out their Spider-Verse.
But going back to the Vulture, the Keaton bit, way back in 2019, early 2020, they had to be like, hey, MCU Vulture, Keaton, we need you on the Sony lot to shoot a cameo or a small scene for our Sony Morbius movie. So Marvel knew this way back when. So I just don't,
because it's politics to some degree, right?
Right.
Like where Marvel's got to play nice and accommodate them in the hopes that they will allow Spider-Man to continue to live in the MCU. And maybe in the end, maybe this will surprise all of us in the end.
I'm hoping that's what happens.
That this is just going to be a total crossover, where Spider-Man's going to be able to go in and out of what they're doing over here, and those characters are able to go in and out of the MCU, and that's the trade-off that they come to, is like, okay, you can build your Spider-Verse, and then we can bring them in, and we're going to create a multiverse to where they can cross over, but it's not necessarily the same continuity. You know what I'm saying?
Or what if they throw us for, this is super like freaking, speculation here. What if they throw us for a loop? They're like, okay, all right, fine. Where in No Way Home, so like Homecoming, Far From Home, I'm trying to like keep my home straight here. In No Way Home, not Far From Home, they introduce Miles Morales.
Very possible. Because they've already mentioned
him. They're already teasing him that we know he exists. You know, the Prowler, his uncle already has been in a movie. So what if the MCU keeps. They're like, okay, fine. You got Miles in the freaking animated verse. Our new Spider-Man will be Miles Morales, and you take Tom Holland.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be a fair trade-off.
I do too. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say I do too. I should say I think that would absolutely work. I think that would be a ton of fun.
And they both could actually jump in and out just like the comic books.
I think that would make fans happy.
Yeah.
Or satisfy fans because you would be able to keep both.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And you can still have them cameo. Like,
yeah.
Like, kind of like what you said. I think best case scenario, which, I mean, being super optimistic, that'd be great if they were able to like, okay, all right, just when we want Tom Holland, we could have him. And when you want him, you could, like, they share him.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like you would always have to designate him to one spot. So, like, what if they each have their Spider-Man and then they just do something where, like, okay, this is our Spider-Man, but we need Tom Holland now to be in the Miles Morales thing or vice versa. I don't know. We already know Miles Morales exists, so he's coming. At some point. And just the pure fact of the amount of money that could be made off that character because of how popular he is.
The question is that going to land in the MCU or is it going to be landing in something?
They already mentioned him in the MCU, Tim. Don't you? Sony cannot be greedy.
It really doesn't mean anything. I mean, they could have just been laying some groundwork for some potential. And maybe it does. I think everybody hopes that it does. My guess, and you know, because I've said it already many times on the show, my anticipation is that we're losing Tom Holland, Peter Parker, Spider-Man out of the MCU for the most part, at least for the most part, and that going forward, it would only be like, you know, maybe shock appearances, you know, due to the multiversal, you know, storylines that they go with, however that works. But you know, and this was my other point, is that the very title No Way Home implies Peter Parker Spider-Man's going somewhere, right? Yeah, that he can't get back from. So, you know, that coupled with just you're not seeing any smoke like last time of like they're trying to work out a new deal. So we've known for a long time this was the last film. This is the last film under contract. So it's like from here out, my anticipation is the most likely scenario is that Tom Holland, if he does continue as Spider-Man, which this mid-credit scene implies that he's going to, at least on some level for maybe at least one more film, that he will continue as Spider-Man. And that to make that transition possible, we are likely going to see Venom in No Way Home, which for me, that was the most exciting part, is that they're going to have Venom at somewhere in there in No Way Home where we're going to see that interaction between Spider-Man and Venom finally, which is that for me is the coolest part.
Yeah. You know, going back to the Miles thing, like you were saying, it's not out of character for the MCU to be like, hey, here's a tease for this character, and then we never touch on him.
Like Adam Warlock.
Or Adam Warlock. Yeah, Adam Strange. That is DC. Adam Warlock is a prime example, even though there's speculation that we will get him in Volume 3.
It's possible.
Finally. Or even the holiday special, Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Why am I forgetting the director's name?
James Gunn.
James Gunn. He teased that there's going to be a character in there that we aren't expecting in the holiday special that's coming out this year.
We'll see.
But going back to the Vulture thing, what I was trying to say earlier and I forgot to say is we saw him in the trailer, we saw him interact with Morbius. How did he get there? How did he get there? So my assumption would be, since this was before all the No Way Home stuff and all the big talk on Multiverse of Madness and before Sam Raimi was brought on and all that stuff, is that they were just going to have the Morbius just be in the MCU universe. That would just be the thing. It's like, it's not that Vulture's coming over. Yep. It's just that Morbius is in the MCU.
That's kind of what I was alluding to when I was saying I think that they've been preparing for this transition for a while.
But
they might just even say that Morbius starts out in the MCU universe and ends up going over to this other one.
That's where that's where the question comes in, because I feel like that throws a big wrench into things with the whole like, oh, so were you just going to do it that way? And now with Venom, you already established that he's not. Well, they didn't not establish. They never. I think you could probably get away with saying Venom was always in the MCU if you wanted to. Sure. Clearly, they did a different route where they freaking made him switch over to a different universe with the whole teleportation thing in that mid-credit scene. But I think it almost would have made more sense to be like, wait, this was always the same universe? And we were like, oh my God, like an M. Night Shyamalan thing where at the end of the movie, you're like, oh my God, he's the dead person. He's been dead all along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, I think that would have been, because this was cool. I actually sat up in my seat, was like, no freaking way, even though I knew something like that was coming.
Yeah.
But I think doing the whole, oh my God, this was always in the MCU, and even kind of going back to like them planting Easter eggs to be like, oh, that is in the same thing as this. That would have been,
could have been cool.
But like we keep saying, I don't think they really knew how this was going to work out.
Well, I mean, clearly they they laid out the release timeline for these films deliberately. So Morbius kept getting pushed further out.
That's another reason. Why is Morbius pushed
think,
so far?
Yeah,
What's the reason for that?
Because I think it had to come out after No Way Home. After whatever they landed on how all of this is going to work. Maybe they had an original plan and they're like, okay, we're going to make it work this way. And then that kind of was in flux, just like the mid-credits scene was so in flux. That was in flux. And whatever they landed on, Morbius clearly had to come out after No Way Home, which, knowing what we know now about what No Way Home is, that makes a ton of sense. Do
you remember if, because dates have changed for movies, especially the Sony movies, like several different, Venom changed like what, 4 different times the date, and Morbius has changed a bunch of different times. Do you remember, was Morbius supposed to come out before Venom 2?
No, I don't think it was supposed to come out before Venom 2. I think it was supposed to come out after Venom 2, but before No Way Home originally.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure. It could have been, because I mean, that thing was in...
Well, I'm just trying to...
No, because wasn't it supposed to originally come out...
I thought it was supposed to come out
I know
before.
It was supposed to come out earlier this year. And then it got moved an entire year. But Venom was also supposed to come out last fall. So originally it was still probably supposed to come out after Venom 2. And then Venom 2 got moved. And so then Morbius got moved. There's been so many different things, like the way these things have. But I do think that Morbius was slated to be after Venom 2 right from the get. And that's why everything just kept getting pushed. But it was supposed to come out before No Way Home. That's kind of the thing that's I think has changed. Because No Way Home didn't get moved or changed, right?
No Way Home got pushed several times.
As far as the release date?
Yeah.
Was that because of production or was that because of...
the pandemic?
So I don't remember any.
No, it got changed, I believe, twice. Twice?
So when was it supposed to originally come out?
It was supposed to come out, I believe, summer this year, and then they bumped it to Christmas. And that was the second time they moved, because it was supposed to come out... Again, between like the Batman and literally every blockbuster movie has been moved.
Yeah.
But I know for sure this is at least the second time that it's been moved.
So Morbius probably still was slated to come out before it, regardless, even from the original dates. So there's definitely been a lot of changes and a lot of things that were in flux. But from my view, this is almost like sealing the deal. I mean, that Tom Holland is on his way to Sony's Spider-Verse.
I rebuke you, Tim.
I have been rebuked.
Holy water. No, that is very plausible. But again, I choose not to think about that. I'm going to be on the side of
living in a state of denial.
Here's hoping they made a contract with Sony and we're like, we'll also take Venom and Morbius too. So, because it's weird, right? Like, we can talk about this forever. We got to move on. But the last thing I'll say, it's weird that like they had the Spider-Man movies. And, they were allowed to use like Vulture and Mysterio, so they could pull Spider-Man villains, obviously, but so could Sony, as obviously they're doing like arguably one of, if not, like top 2 Spider-Man villains, Venom, and then they're doing Morbius and Kraven. So it's like they're sharing. It's like, oh, we're doing Venom, so you can't do that, but you could do Mysterio. It's this really weird, like, I wonder, they probably have to ask each other. Obviously, it's like, hey, we want this bad guy. We want the bad guy to be, I don't know, Hobgoblin. You're going to use Hobgoblin? No, we're not going to use Hobgoblin. You use Hobgoblin.
Like trading cards.
Yeah. So it's just really freaking weird. And you would imagine that this is all going to lead to a Sinister Six.
One would think.
You would think that's...
Especially the characters they chose
based
on the characters
So we're going to have Kraven, Morbius, Venom, Vulture, Hobgoblin, and... Scorpion. They tease Scorpion. They tease Scorpion.
Even
and Shocker is still around, right? The new Shocker. So that's more than enough to have your Sinister Six there. So,
and we know, or at least the heavy rumor, if not confirmed, I can't remember is Jamie Foxx coming back as Electro.
That's another thing.
And he was one of the founding members of the Sinister Six.
That's another. Well, and then you have Doc Ock, who literally created the Sinister Six. So what? Oh my God. What if this movie, we didn't even realize
it creates the Sinister
Six?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I never thought of that till now.
You didn't think of that?
Not within this movie, no.
Oh, that's what that was one of the big things that I was thinking about is that they're likely going to finalize the formation.
No,
of the Sinister
because
Six.
now, oh my god, because it was weird because I'm like, yeah, Venom could have an appearance in it, Electro could have an appearance in it, but like, dude, if you're bringing the Green Goblin back, you obviously have Doc Ock who forms it, Venom, and then you bring over, you got Electro, and then you bring over
Vulture.
Vulture and the existing characters, which I guess the only existing one that's currently out now would be Venom because Morbius, we haven't seen it yet. And you bring Venom over, and have Scorpion come back because again, we know he's going to go Scorpion from the end of Homecoming. Yep. Man, that'd be dope.
So you got Morbius. Vulture approached Morbius.
Yeah.
So you got Vulture, Morbius, Scorpion. Shocker. Well, let's shelve Scorpion and Shocker for now. We'll say Morbius, Vulture, Electro, Doc Ock, Green Goblin,
Venom,
and
you say
I don't
Venom.
think Venom would be one of the Sinister Six.
You very much could make him one though.
I don't think they'll do that.
I mean,
because they want to make him a hero.
You think they're gonna make him a hero?
I think they want to make him a hero.
No, not right away. No,
I think so. Based on the movies, yeah.
No, wait. You have to, because even at that post-credit scene where like he licks the Peter Parker and it's like something's familiar about him. It's like, oh, he doesn't want to be friends with him. He wants to fight him.
Yeah, I just can't see them making him like full-blown villain like that.
If you don't have a conflict,
so then it would be, for me, it would be Scorpion.
If you don't have we're going another route with it. If they bring freaking Venom in, which they already did, obviously. So when they bring him in and we see it, and you don't have him have a conflict with Spider-Man first, I'm out. There's no way. You can't introduce him as an anti-hero straight out the gate. You can't do that.
I think that they're going to, they might have a small conflict, but I don't think it's going to be nearly satisfying for you.
His whole arc is slowly he's a villain, and then he comes to the realization, oh, no, I kind of want to help people, and then he slowly turns the hero out. Like, he didn't really go full-blown hero until recently in the Donny Cates run.
They already did it in the second film.
Yeah, but no.
He was full-blown lethal protector at the second film.
Yeah, but now Spider-Man, Tim. Spider-Man. You have to fight Spider-Man.
I'll be shocked. I'll just say it like that. I will be shocked if they do it. I'll be shocked if it's just not a minor conflict and then they're on the same team.
Throw the whole thing away.
Start over. Scrap the whole ball.
Recast everything.
But we can't go on about this forever. So let's move on to, because
last thing I will say, let us know in the comments how mad you would be if when Venom meets Spider-Man, there is not some conflict there first, because that would be such a missed opportunity, because you were already getting screwed over by not having a Spider-Man wear the black costume.
True.
Because they're
well,
doing
that we've seen yet.
I mean, yeah, they could do their own version of it, but that's another thing. They got to do that to some extent.
There's a lot you can say about all that, though.
I know I said that's the last thing, but there's a lot to talk. You know, I'm a big Spider-Man fan. If when he meets Spider-Man, we don't finally get the white spider on Venom's chest, because that's another thing that pissed me off in this whole thing. I'm like,
it's true.
If we don't get the white spider on Venom's chest, which that's literally Venom's logo.
I think that happens when Peter Parker and Venom interact, and then he goes from, not sure what he wants to do with him to they become partners or they work together, and he wants to be like Spider-Man.
And don't get me wrong, they've worked together numerous amount of times in the comics. They do. I'm just saying that all happened after they had a conflict.
Yeah. We'll see.
Need that conflict.
We'll see. I don't know how much conflict we're gonna get. We might get a little, but we'll see. Anyway. But that leads us to the What If finale. So spoilers for What If before we get into anything. Spoilers for the both the second to last episode and the finale of What If.
The What If finale.
The What If finale. So we left off last time.
Well, we didn't talk about the second to last episode.
We did not, because we had not seen it yet.
What if Ultron
So we
won?
left off talking about Thor, right? So the Thor episodes, the frat boy party Thor episode, What If Thor was an only child? And both of us neither of us liked it. You liked it a lot, or disliked it less than I disliked it. I disliked it a lot.
You say you hated it.
I did not like it at all.
And I was just like, yeah, easily the worst episode of the season.
Yeah, I was shocked at how much of a filler episode it actually ended up being. And one of the things that I didn't elaborate on, I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but at the very end of that episode, we get Infinity Ultron in Vision's body. He just kind of shows up right at the tail end. You think that, everything is fine, and then boom, he shows up.
Which was a nice tease to the episode that came after.
Last, yeah. So we actually put up a poll last week, like I said, about the Thor episode, asking all of you guys if you liked it or disliked it. where did you fall in relation to what we thought about it? And I was actually surprised that how many of you actually liked it. 47% of the audience actually just flatly liked the episode.
Because of Thor Ragnarok, I kind of, so I was like, I bet you a lot of people would be like, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely
crazy.
Definitely like fair, I guess, is not that big of a shock, but 53% of you either landed, so 15% didn't like it like I did, and 38% landed in the meh, like whatever, throwaway filler episode, sort of a camp. So 53% were on the didn't like it or meh side. So the majority didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely not as vehement as I was.
But then going into the next episode, Tim.
Yeah.
That episode.
Fantastic.
So in that episode, it's kind of like a what if scenario of the Age of Ultron, like where he wins, he gets Vision's body, and then he eventually gets the Infinity Stones. And it's the reason why this episode's so cool, I think most people are like, yeah, this episode is because it just shows the most OP Ultron ever.
Ridiculous.
Where like he's just mowing through. Like
basically undefeatable.
Like, legitimately, like, at one point, freaking Thanos shows up. He just looks at him and says something like, interesting.
He just like, interesting.
Interesting. And then uses one of the Infinity Stones to literally saw him in half. Yeah. And just dead.
Just within, like,
dead.
5 seconds.
And it's funny.
He's just like, huh. Splits him in two.
I told you, I think it's so funny when you read comic books and you watch, all these superhero movies and stuff. It's like, why didn't he just freaking like take his head off, or why didn't he just like do this? And it's like, because
instead of monologuing.
Yeah, it's because you wouldn't have a story. But in this episode, they did like, oh, this is how it would actually go in real life. You wouldn't waste time doing all this stuff because you had to tell a story and you had to make it entertaining. You would just kill them the easiest way out, and that's what Ultron was doing in the show.
Yeah,
and it was great just seeing. I'm a fan of OP people, obviously. That's why I like Superman and stuff so much. Right. I just like seeing powerful characters tear all these villains and bad guys down, except this time it was the flip where we saw this villain mowing down anyone and everything. And punching through universes.
Well, you have to lay the groundwork for how we get to that. So he goes through and he destroys everything in our universe. He destroys Earth, and then he goes around and he destroys Asgard, and he just wipes out the entire universe. And when it's all done, he becomes aware of the Watcher. The Watcher's watching this in horror, and he's kind of like, narrating like he has every other episode. But there's been little hints along the way throughout the season that the Watcher is becoming more concerned and more involved. And even Doctor Strange becomes aware of him in the Doctor Strange episode. For just a moment, he becomes aware that he's there. But at the end of the episode, Vision fully becomes aware that the Watcher is there, realizing that there is a multiverse, and actually punches through the barrier into the realm where the Watcher lives, and has an actual confrontation with the Watcher, which is all by itself. That was one of the coolest parts of the entire episode, was seeing like the Watcher go into full battle mode.
Dude, he freaking puts on like battle armor.
Yeah, like battle armor, and goes and fights Infinity Ultron, which was just a dope part. But in the end, he pretty much defeats the Watcher.
Dude, the part where I don't remember.
And that's what leads to the punching through universes.
Yeah, I don't
galaxies,
remember. I don't remember if it was the Watcher punching Ultron or Ultron punching the Watcher, but one of them is punching the other on the ground, and every punch they're like being transported to a different universe or different Earth. And it was
awesome.
This is so freaking cool. It just shows the magnitude of like not only the Infinity Stones, which we basically already knew from the live action MCU, but the Watcher. Yeah, like if the Watcher interfered, or imagine if all the Watchers, there's more than one Watcher.
Right, exactly.
It's a race. So if they all interfered, like, dude, they could have easily stopped Thanos.
Crazy.
Before. It just needs like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
But I just loved the whole it was kind of, they kind of went Man of Steel on it, where you see them flying in the air and like punching each other, but every time they punch, they're like being teleported to a different Earth because they're
like shattering
themselves
space
through universes. But that was really cool too, seeing Ultron like break through that barrier.
Yeah.
And Uatu was all like, "What? How?
Yeah.
This is impossible."
Yeah.
The whole bit was really, really cool.
It was very cool. And then he proceeds from there because Vision ultimately
it's my second favorite episode of the season.
Yeah. I would say. Yeah. No, yeah.
The Doctor Strange episode is still my favorite one.
Yeah, I would say that still lands, but it's pretty dang close. That was a really, really good episode, which I needed, because I needed a good follow-up to that Thor one. But I was still waiting to see. I was hoping that they were going to create some kind of this is why we did the Thor episode, right? Especially leading into the finale, that Thor was going to play a bigger role, that there was going to be some important reason why they did this with Thor, and they had that episode. And you know, at the end of the second to last episode where they introduce Infinity Ultron, it's like this, you know, he basically defeats the Watcher. The Watcher is forced to flee and leaves Infinity Ultron to basically just go start ravaging all the different universes. Any universe that he sees, there's life. And he goes through, and the Watcher ends up going to Doctor Strange, the Doctor Strange Supreme, and saying, I need your help. Because as we know, at the end of the Doctor Strange episode, he kind of isolates himself into a pocket dimension where he can't harm anyone, basically. And so he goes to that pocket dimension, the Watcher does, and says, I need your help. And he actually intervenes. And he starts to. That leads us to the finale episode,
which is really cool. I mean, they, you know, by the end of this, again, spoilers for the entire season. Did you think they were going to link this entire series together, this entire first season?
I wasn't sure that they were going to do that, but you started getting hints of it along the way.
Certain characters. I didn't think they were going to do every character.
Yeah.
Like every episode served a purpose by the end. I mean, you know, they
every character specifically.
Yeah, they made a full-blown team
yeah.
by the end of the finale.
Yeah, so the Watcher right at the beginning of the finale episode, he goes around recruiting a team to fight and defeat Thanos. He concocts a plan with Doctor Strange Supreme, and he goes around, the Watcher does, and gathers a team comprised of Killmonger, T'Challa, Black Panther.
Captain Carter.
It's Killmonger, Black Panther, T'Challa, Black Panther,
T'Challa, Star-Lord.
T'Challa, Star-Lord. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Peggy Carter, Captain Carter, and
Party Thor.
Yeah, Party Thor and Gamora.
Gamora, yeah. Well, she was new to this episode.
Yeah, Thanos, Gamora, which I was kind of disappointed in. I really thought they were going to give. They should have given that a story.
The armor and everything like that.
And that kind of goes back to my point. It's like, why did you waste an entire episode on that stupid Party Thor thing when you could have given her an episode to explain how she became a Thanos, essentially?
Well, he was in this episode.
He was, and that's the point that I'm going to get to, because they did not only did they not redeem that episode, they actually made it worse for me. I do not like, and I want to hear what you think about this. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, especially based on this poll and based on the sheer volume of people that love like Thor Ragnarok. I do not like the direction that they are going and have gone with Thor and Chris Hemsworth's Thor character. It's just become too dumb. It's too. Well, I don't want to sound too harsh, and maybe dumb is too harsh, but he's too dumbed down. It's too like goofy. It's too goofy, dumbed down, very like frat boy, like, hey, could somebody explain this again? Because one of us doesn't understand what's going on. It's not me, though. It's like really over the top.
Which I don't think, you know, dumb would be too harsh, because I think the whole purpose of this version of Thor is to kind of be dumb in the sense to where he literally, a lot of the jokes is he doesn't understand. Like he doesn't get it.
But I think that for me,
they're trying to make him not like the most intelligent character.
But I feel like this is what Chris Hemsworth, because he thinks it's more fun. I feel like this is what he wants to do with the character, and this is kind of the path that got set out for this character with Taika Waititi, and they're going even further, and that's why I'm concerned about Love and Thunder.
But I think you have to
because you saw it in Endgame too with Fat Thor and the whole thing,
right? But I think for this, you kind of have to play, you know, be more optimistic and disassociate the two, because this Thor and What If is not the MCU Chris Hemsworth Thor.
Not completely, no.
They're two different Thors. It's from a completely different reality. So I feel that's where I was kind of like, okay, by this episode, I'm like, yeah. But I started accepting it because I'm like, this is What If. This isn't the Thor that's going to be in Love and Thunder that was in Thor Ragnarok. So you can do anything with this, or you can kill him, give him 2 heads. This is not that Thor. So I was a little more forgiving with that. I'm like, yeah, it's an alternate version of Thor. So this alternate version of Thor is literally that party Thor where he is that bro.
Yeah.
Like he's got a tattoo that says science on his arm. So I'm like, all right, you can do whatever you want with this Thor. It's an alternate reality. That's the point of Elseworlds and What Ifs and stuff. But if they do continue and do borrow that to the, you know, the live action Thor that's in the 616 MC universe, then I will agree with you and be like, yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. Totally. I get it. But I guess the reason for my concern is what I mentioned before, is that they already had kind of set out on this course with Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok with Thor. Because for me, the progression I thought was going to be the very first Thor, He's young. He's kind of like, he's arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's got that little frat boy, you know, privileged king's kid thing going on. And, you know, so you expected, it made sense at that time. He's young, he's arrogant, you know, he doesn't take anything seriously.
Uh-huh.
You know, he doesn't know a lot. He's very inexperienced overall as a leader, as a king. But then there should have been this progression where, and that's not to say he can't make jokes or there can't be humor. That's not what I'm saying, obviously. I'm talking about, we made this huge leap from even Thor in the Avengers films, like the first 2 Avengers films, to Thor Ragnarok and his behavior in Thor Ragnarok. To the whole like, hey, he's a friend from work. Like that whole thing, like just this very goofy, and it's just progressively like to where we got to Endgame with like Fat Thor, and that whole gag went on the entire movie.
Yeah. Up
until the very end where they were going to take on Thanos. And I don't know about how many of you, but for me, I thought in that moment,
he should have been like Rock Thor
when
again.
he went like serious and he was just like, you know, okay, we're all on the same page. Let's kill him properly this time. I thought he was just, when the lightning hit, I thought he was just going to go back to Thor and we were going to get like, you know, Odin-powered borderline Thor. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? We were going to get King Thor.
Have you
finally.
seen him?
And like, he just stayed fat. He was just Fat Thor in the fat suit.
Well, lightning doesn't shed LBs, apparently.
Yeah, and it was like they needed that so that they could line up, you know, some kind of, you know, continue the Bowflex joke for the next movie. And I guess my point is there's too much of the direction they're going with actual Thor in the MCU in that bro Thor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just exaggerated it even further, but it's still kind of the direction. So I'm like, is this going to continue? Are they going to continue to make Thor dumber and dumber until he's gone? You know, to where like in, you know, because for all intents and purposes, he's got to appear in, you would think, in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 on some level because he leaves with the Guardians. So that's
as Guardians of the Galaxy.
So I don't know because Thor: Love and Thunder comes out before Guardians 3 does. So is Guardians 3 going to be out of sync chronologically, and it's going to show the timeline, you know, from when they leave till whatever or what?
Well, he's definitely shed the weight for Love and Thunder.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
seen like
I mean, he's a beast.
He's the biggest he's ever been.
Yeah,
in,
he's the beast. He's a
this
beast.
new Thor movie. So this is actually the 4th Thor movie. Wow, 4 Thor movies, huh?
Yeah.
Dang.
But
that's crazy.
I got off track on the Thor thing. The point is that there was no redemption for that.
It's an alternate reality Thor. Just
and
it
made it again. It just emphasized like, why didn't we get an episode on how Gamora became Thanos? Like that would have been a much cooler episode than the Party Thor one, in my opinion. But thankfully, the point, having gotten that off my chest. The last 2 episodes were very good. The second to last I thought was absolutely brilliant. The finale, though, while good, was not as good and was kind of like, it was good, but it didn't leave me like wowed.
Yeah, it didn't leave me wowed either. It was just, it was good. I didn't, the whole, them forming the Guardians of the Multiverse is what they did once they got Star-Lord, T'Challa, and Killmonger, Black Panther, and Captain Carter, and so on and so forth. They're like, you know, Uatu's basically like, you are the Guardians of the Multiverse, and now they're a team and stuff like that. I thought it was smart, though. I did like how they linked things together, especially with Black Widow.
Yeah.
She came back around. And the Armin Zola like virus that she had from the episode she was in with Hawkeye, which was the previous episode, she used it to defeat Infinity Ultron there, and that was really cool because then the whole time you're like, well, Killmonger, he was never a good guy, so why are you freaking having him on the team? And
I was about to say I liked how they handled both Killmonger and Armin Zola.
So it's like, why are you bringing him on the team? And then once they defeat him. You know, in that episode, you see him holding Ultron's head at the beginning of the episode, and he's holding it at the end too, and he uses it to take the Infinity Stones and the armor for himself. But then Armin Zola is like, yeah, no, and they fight over it. And the one thing I did really like about that episode, because I did like it, it just wasn't as good as the previous one, was how OP they made this Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
like I want to, because.
Yeah,
we need to see this Doctor Strange live action because the way he would turn into like these squid alien monsters and had the demon fire eyes,
with like Cthulhu and stuff.
I'm hoping that's what we get in Multiverse of Madness because we already know that it's supposed to be the horror MCU movie, and they're bringing Sam Raimi, who's got that, that fun horror element to him. So I want to see Doctor Strange doing these spells where he turns into like a demon or a monster and has like these claws and tentacles and stuff like that.
That's the place to do it.
Yeah, for real. So I love that they showed that in this series, this version of Doctor Strange, this Strange Supreme. But at the end, I thought it was really cool because once Killmonger gets the Infinity Stones and he's fighting Armazola, they're fighting over it. Strange goes all out again and is like, does one of his spells. Because the whole time, the only reason why Captain Carter or any of those members are surviving is because he put a protection spell over them. Yeah. So it's literally, kind of like he's almost soloing
in a way,
Ultron, because he's having help, but he's also the one keeping these other guys alive while simultaneously fighting this Ultron.
To the point where Infinity Ultron says and finally realizes it's you.
Yes.
If I take you out, everybody else falls.
And it's really curious to me that at the end of this, we see, in order to stop Killmonger and Armazola, who are now going at it, fighting over the Infinity Stones, he puts them in a pocket dimension. Then we see him with Uatu being like, what are you going to do with it? He's like, well, you just got to guard him, right? You just got to guard it. But that purple pocket dimension thing we kind of saw a glimpse of it in the Venom end credit scene when they have that switched reality. You see it like quickly. It's probably in 2 frames or something like that. And we also saw it in the Doctor Strange episode that he had this season in What If, where he puts himself in that dimension. So I'm like, will we end up seeing this Strange Supreme in No Way Home?
Some version
of it? Or because everyone knows something's up with Doctor Strange in the trailer. Is he, we said it before, I think we said it last week, is he going to turn out to be Strange Supreme?
Man, but it's weird. It's interesting that they introduced this concept in What If.
But they kind of made him a good guy at the end of What If. They're like, where he got his bearings together, where like he was evil, but now, because he even had the opportunity. Killmonger even said, look, you out of everyone know what it's like to lose a loved one. The reason you are who you are is because you were trying to get your loved one back. This is your chance, and he didn't go for it. So maybe
he returns to the pocket dimension. However, Uatu leaves him with a pocket dimension inside a pocket dimension with Killmonger
and the Infinity Stones
and Armazola with the Infinity Stones, because they're battling out. And that could, going back to, and to clarify, when I said I like the way that they handled Killmonger and Armazola, is that they brought Killmonger in as a member of the team. He helps defeat them, but you see him kind of already scheming. And in the end, because they use that virus from Armanzola's to defeat Vision in the end, they infect Vision with the Armanzola's virus, the AI virus. And but in the end, you see that in the mentality ends up betraying itself, and it winds up destroying itself, because the two wind up, their greed for their own ambitions they wind up, basically dooming themselves. So I liked the way they handled that, where they introduced the characters, they used the characters wisely, and they presented them in a right way but they showed like these things never go well in the end when you're operating with this type of a mindset. So I did like the way they handled that, but they end up in a pocket dimension of their own created by Doctor Strange, right? Uatu actually takes the pocket dimension and gives it to him inside his pocket dimension, and says, I'll entrust them with you.
Can you imagine?
And that's how it ends.
If they bring the Infinity Stones back because it's an alternate reality.
That'd be wild.
Infinity Stones, and now we have them again, and now, because the Multiverse of Madness, man, there's just so many possibilities.
I kind of don't want them to do that. I kind of want them to let that live.
Yeah,
on its own.
But I mean, it'd be pretty interesting because again, seeing a freaking Doctor Strange infused with who could beat that? A Doctor Strange infused with Infinity Stones.
There's so many different things that they could do at this
point.
They're
probably not going to do that. No, but it's fun to think about.
The biggest question mark for me remains, and that I want to see is, will anything from What If end up in the live action MCU, or is this going to live on its own?
I feel like, because before the finale, I feel like there was a lot of ways they could have gone to do that.
Yeah.
With the way they ended this finale, especially with Strange Supreme, I'm like, they pretty much kind of like they left him as a good guy.
Yep.
I mean, you could always go the other route, but they kind of closed that door where like he's a good guy now, and they're gonna go to season 2.
At least so far that we could tell.
Right. There's always room, but the way they very much ended it, where like, because again, they presented him with the opportunity to literally do what he always wanted to do, but he said no, telling us, oh, he's a good guy now. He's a hero.
Technically, he has his hands on the Infinity Stones.
But he's going to be the good guy he is, and just watch them.
We'll see. We'll see. But the other interesting part is this is the first one and the only one where they gave you a mid-credit scene at the end.
So lame.
But I just thought it was interesting that they did it. And was that to lead us? So the mid-credit scene, again,
sorry for anyone who loved that end-credit scene, but to me it was just very meh.
It was Black Widow leading Peggy Carter, Captain Carter, to a storage facility where I believe it was Hydra, correct? A Hydra storage facility,
they
Hydra warehouse.
They were full on Winter Soldiering it, where they were mimicking the scenes, the beginning scene.
That's exactly right. So they had it was a total, and that was one of the things that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Peggy Carter episode. It was just too mirrored
for sure
for Steve Rogers' story. I just didn't feel like it was they were as creative with it as they could have been.
They clearly just want to show us what it would be like if she was in that scenario.
And did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So they had that scene where they get onto the ship at the beginning of Winter Soldier, and they're looking for whatever, and Steve fights that guy. I can't remember his name. But anyway, they did that. And Black Widow winds up saying, Black Widow winds up saying to Peggy, Captain Carter, hey, there's something you got to see. They takes it to a cargo bay, and she says, she looks inside. She's like, it's in this sealed container. And she looks in, and it's the, what did they call it for the show? The Hydra Stomper suit. And Black Widow says, and there's someone inside. So it's almost like frozen Steve Rogers,
or a dead body,
or a skeleton.
He's a stinky rotting corpse of Steve.
Could be that. But I found it interesting that that was the only mid-credit scene they did the entire season, and I found it interesting that they put that in there right at the end in the finale. And it's like, okay, is that because you're just leading us, you're setting something up for the second season of What If, or
I think probably that.
Are you telling us something that is going to emerge live action in the next few movies as they're busting the multiverse wide open? Who knows? It could go either way. But I did think it was interesting that was their choice and an intentional decision to go with in the finale when there had been no mid-credit scenes the entire season. So I thought that was interesting. Speaking
of interesting, that you hear the director of the What If series came out and said they were going to do, or had in the works at least, a spin-off for the What If series starring Star-Lord T'Challa.
No.
So Chadwick Boseman was going to reprise his role as T'Challa, Star-Lord, for a spin-off What If series. And they had it in the works. Obviously, unfortunately, he passed. So now it's in flux. But it's not canceled completely. They said it's still, in the works in the sense where it may happen. It may not, but it still may happen even without him. I just don't know, how you freaking recast that role. I mean, the thing with What If, though, is you had a lot of people not voicing the characters played in the MCU. So I guess you can get away with it in that sense. But I don't know if I'd even want to see that now, because I kind of like how Boseman, because he was in this episode.
Yeah, it was the
finale. It's like, let it be the farewell.
Yeah, again, the only thing I would say is people really want T'Challa. Fans really want to see T'Challa's character continued. Understandably, amazing character, huge character in comics. And it is kind of sad to see that character completely go away, especially the way it left off. Understandably, I would completely understand if Disney didn't want to touch it. Going forward because of Chadwick Boseman. But it's going to be interesting to see how they transition, because we're getting another Black Panther film. Black Panther's continuing. We're going to get another Black Panther. It's probably going to be Shuri. How are they going to get us there? I have no idea. That's like the big heavy lift that we've all been talking about.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes. I just kind of like, let's see what they do with Black Panther after this. But I think as far as that particular Black Panther goes, let this be the final performance. Let it go out with Chadwick.
Anyway, DC Fandome, Tim.
Yeah,
lots
DC Fandome.
to talk about DC Fandome. I mean,
I shouldn't say there's not really a lot to talk about. It's just more theorizing and stuff like that. because we got a new teaser trailer for DC Fandome.
Well, there's a lot to talk about as far as what we're officially getting, because none of it is out yet. That's going to be next week, the 16th, I believe.
Right.
But they confirmed, we already knew this was going to happen, but the big thing is the DC officially confirmed at the end of the trailer, we will be getting a second trailer for The Batman.
Yep.
Which, obviously, that movie was supposed to come out in like May or something like that.
Yeah.
It got moved like 2 times or something. There's a brief, very brief. I think I said brief like 10 times already?
You can cut out a couple more if you want.
Brief clip of Black Adam in the trailer. We see The Rock from like head up as Black Adam, but you could see the costume a little bit. You see the pattern there. Oh, I guess the biggest reveal as far as footage they actually showed is in the Peacemaker clips they showed. We get our first full shots of Vigilante. Who's also going to be in the series, and he looks ripped right out of the comic books, which is really, really great. Even before that, we got a minute clip of Peacemaker, which I loved. I'm a big fan of Peacemaker.
We're on very different ends of the aisle
but
on that.
Even with the Suicide Squad in general, you weren't a big fan.
Well,
of
that's why.
You weren't a big fan of the new Suicide Squad. I freaking loved it, especially Bloodsport and Peacemaker. So the fact that we get a Peacemaker series, I'm in it.
I would have much, I get that there's people who liked Peacemaker. It's not my cup of tea at all. I much would have rathered a Bloodsport series.
That would have been dope too. I would have been down for that too.
I would have much rathered a Bloodsport series than a Peacemaker
they were
series. Peacemaker. For me, the vibe is too identical to Doom Patrol.
Patrol,
yeah,
like
wait. Very
like the
tone. Like the comedic.
No.
Yes, very much so.
No way, dude. That's like
that's the whole shtick for Doom Patrol. Is that the whole thing is goofy? It's played for laughs. There's a lot of comedy in it.
Yeah, but Doom Patrol is so weird and bizarre and out and like trippy. That show, I would say that show is more trippy than any of the stuff you were just saying.
I'm talking about the comedic like tone to it. The entire show is played for not to be serious.
Yeah, but the Peacemaker thing seems more like rated R, like.
So it's Doom Patrol. It's not rated R.
Rated R, like
goofy
comedy, where it's like there's gonna be like a lot of like penis jokes and stuff like that, which I'm all for.
Not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea at all.
That bit between freaking Bloodsport and Peacemaker in the Suicide Squad movie, where he's like, no one likes to show off, and then freaking Peacemaker is like, unless what you're showing off is dope as. We try to keep this family friendly, so I'm not gonna say it. And then Bloodsport is like, dang, he's right. But he says, the 4-letter word, he's right. Again, family friendly. I died. Freaking that.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what the show's gonna be.
Yeah.
Even in that bit where he's like,
but you and me are so different. You like that college beer pong humor.
Dude,
I really do not.
It totally fits what even John Cena said with the behind the scenes. He's a douchebag Captain America.
Yeah.
Like he's a bro who's like goes around shooting people for peace.
Yeah.
and that's
maybe
amazing.
It ends up being a better show than the movie, but if it's anything like the movie, it's not going to be my thing.
The fact that in that bit, that minute clip, he has a pet eagle that he carries around in his back seat.
And he calls it Eagly or something?
Freaking, I'm in it, Tim.
Yeah.
I'm in it. Anyway.
I'm sure I'm going to be in the minority. I'm used to that. I'm in the minority a lot.
I just like John Cena too. I'm a fan of John Cena. I feel like he's really likable, and he plays that.
I agree with that.
He's really funny. I think that his delivery and a lot of that stuff is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's not anything about John Cena. I actually like John Cena a lot.
Yeah.
He seems like a really cool guy, and usually he's He's
what are you gonna say, Tim? What are you gonna say?
Let's see. Well, how do I want to phrase this so I don't have to apologize to China?
Wow.
I'll just leave it there. But I like John Cena. It's not about John Cena. It's just the style of the show.
But we went down a weird rabbit hole. Point is, Fandome's gonna release a lot of cool stuff.
Well, we were talking about Peacemaker.
Peacemaker.
So the whole point was Peacemaker. Like the clip looks very much. You're looking forward to it. I'm really not. I'll probably watch.
I was gonna say you're probably gonna watch it.
I'll probably watch first couple episodes just to see how it is and how it ended up working out, so we can talk about it here.
Well, I want to know how it's gonna tie in, because at the end of the Suicide Squad, obviously that mid-credit scene there or whatever, we see Peacemaker is alive, just badly injured. So I want to know how did he recover? Is he still working for Amanda Waller?
Yeah.
What's that whole deal? Is it going to connect to like, is he going to ask about Bloodsport? Are we going to get cameos from Harley Quinn? Are we going to get, DCEU characters in there? Because it's in the DCEU. This is the first show. This is the first HBO Max show that is connected to the DCEU. So we could, get references of Superman, Shazam, Black Adam, all of it. So I'm curious to see as far as how it interconnects with the greater universe they have.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? Like with everything they're going to introduce, that's just remains the big question. They're introducing the potential for a lot of cool things with the Flash, the Batman. I don't know where they're going to end up going with Aquaman. Wonder Woman's kind of just floating out there after 1984.
Such a shame.
So that remains like the big question is, how are they going to tie it all together? Where are they going to take the DC cinematic? Is it just going to end up being, and that's kind of the vibe that it's starting to feel like. And the more that comes out, the more this is starting to feel like they're just going to say, this is a multiverse. Everything just kind of lives and breathes and has its own space. And we're not tying it all together into one continuity like the MCU. We're just going to let these things go. We're going to do what we want, when we want, and how we want. And the fans can have a myriad of different things to enjoy, which kind of goes back to what I was saying. If that's the direction they go and we start getting this really broad, spectrum of various different, DC, entertainment options to where it is, because that's really my main point, is I would just like it to be more balanced and not go so much in one direction to where there's a lot of different options. And it does starting to seem like that's the direction they're going to go, where there's going to be a whole bunch of different things going on. You're going to have a lot of different things to choose from. You're going to have the Gotham show coming out, the Gotham PD show that's going to be coming out, and a lot of things tied into Matt Reeves's universe and stuff like that. So if that's the direction, which is increasingly is looking like it is, there's going to be a lot of things to look forward to coming from DC overall. And, this DC Fandome is going to show us much more about what that's going to look like.
I feel like you have to connect the universes though in this, or you have to have at least one main universe, right? Because the Flash can only, because then if not, you have to have the Flash helping people bounce in and out of universes all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There has to be like a proper one. And then you could explain, you could jump to other universes, but there has to be a main one where your characters live. You can't just have Aquaman by himself, Flash by himself, because how are they going to get bounced back and forth? You're just never going to have them interact with each other again. So it's like,
which one survives?
Yeah, which is it going to be? And now we know Andy Muschietti, the director of The Flash, said that recently that everything that's ever been done for DC counts. It's all in the multiverse. So you're talking about, every animated show, the CW stuff, everything. The Reeves movies, obviously the Keaton stuff because he's in the freaking movie, all that stuff. But I just want to know where it's going to end. Who's going to be their Batman now? We know Affleck is in this movie, but is Affleck going to keep playing Batman? I would assume not. Not for much longer. So you have the theory, well, they're going to bring Matt Reeves Batman in here, Pattinson, he's going to be the DCU Batman. But then you have a lot of people over there. I think Matt Reeves even himself saying, no, this is my own universe. And then they're even building that out with the HBO Max stuff, with the Penguin series they're working on, the GCPD show they're working on. So it's like, okay, maybe you do just have your own little section. So there's just so much things in flux and questions to be answered, kind of like with Marvel right now with their multiverse. That's the problem with comic books in general. When you're dealing with the multiverse, it's just like, oh god, it's like could be really cool, but it's a headache because it's like
it's a never-ending well.
It's just like, what are you gonna do? And then it gets convoluted, and you have to, you're gonna piss off fans because they'll be like, well, actually, that wouldn't work because time travel doesn't work that way, and so it's like it's just this thing. This is what I want. In my perfect world, this is what I want, Tim. I want, in the Flash movie, we get the Keaton Batman. He ends up being like a mentor figure and stuff like that. Maybe he comes back with freaking Barry to his timeline or stays in his timeline, because that's another thing. Is Flash in the Keaton timeline? Did he bring Keaton over to his universe? We don't know how that's gonna work. I would imagine Flash went to his universe because we know his Batcave is in it. Yeah. So I guess it's, but I don't know. We don't know yet. This is all speculation. I would assume that the Flash is traveling to Keaton's universe, which is why he's older, yada, yada, yada. But by the end of that movie, I want them to Jeff Johns' New 52 it, or Flashpoint it, rather, at the end of that, where Barry's in the Batcave and he comes back and he creates a new timeline. And when he talks to Batman, you see that this Batman is now Pattinson Batman. And it explains things that way. It writes out Affleck, and we still have Keaton, but he's still in his universe. Maybe Barry could jump back every now and then, or maybe he comes back with him. And now you have Pattinson Batman, and then that's now in continuity with Gal Gadot, with Jason Momoa, Shazam, Black Adam, all that stuff, and we're set. Because the only thing you really have to figure out now is your Batman, right? Because Affleck, I would love him to keep being Batman, especially in good directors' hands and good writers, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I want to see Ben Affleck sacrifice himself.
Almost kind of like
as a to save the multiverse.
Do you think they kill him over?
To let one universe thrive? Because remember, everything from the Snyderverse, it goes towards this apocalyptic.
He was eventually going to kill himself. Yeah,
exactly. It goes towards this, apocalyptic confrontation with a dark side of corrupted Superman. So that was the groundwork for that was already kind of laid. So I would like to see them make it to where he sacrifices himself and that's his last hurrah. But I kind of selfishly, I just kind of want to let Michael Keaton Batman survive and just live somewhere.
No, for sure. I want all the Keaton Batman. I would full on want him to mentor, another version of himself, or even Barry somehow. I just want Keaton Batman.
That would be
any way
amazing.
I can get it.
That would be amazing. But I do think I want that too, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think by the end, Pattinson is going to be our main Batman.
What if Flash, Barry Allen, goes over to Keaton? He's helping him the whole movie. By the end of the movie, Flash goes back to his reality. But then there's a post-credit scene where we see Keaton in his Batcave. He's obviously old now, like he is going to be in the movie. And then he gets a knock or something on his doorbell, or he sees on his camera that people are fighting outside of his Wayne Manor, and he goes outside and he helps this kid who's getting beat up. And then he's like, "Who are you?" He goes, "My name's Terry." And then it just cuts, which gives us a direct origin to Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond, just like it was given to us. And could you imagine if they set up to where he's mentoring Barry, kind of hey, he's a mentor figure. Barry goes back, does his own thing in his new universe he created or whatever. And then that's our scene where where Keaton meets freaking Terry McGinnis at Wayne Manor, and alluding to we're getting Batman Beyond.
That would be crazy.
I'm telling you, the internet would
would break.
That would be
everything would break if they did that. Oh
man, because
isn't that doing too much at once?
No, Tim. No, it's doing just the right amount.
I kind of like the idea of introducing Michael Keaton, Batman, doing that. Well, no, you're right.
It would be it would just be a teaser.
Yeah, do it at the end. And dude, what if? Oh my God, what if they did that as a freaking side series on HBO Max? And they introduced that concept. You could be right. That could be amazing. If they introduce that in the Flash film where you have a scene, something like that, and then they reveal that they're developing a Batman Beyond series on HBO Max with Michael Keaton reprising his role as Old Man Batman.
Because you could totally pull it off, because as everyone knows Batman Beyond's origin, Bruce is actually in the Batman Beyond suit at that point. He's just realized he's getting too old and he starts having a heart attack to the point where it forces him to use a gun. Yeah. Something he swore he would never do.
Right.
So by the end of the Flash movie, helping the Flash be Batman, he realizes he's getting too old for it. Yeah. He's like, I can't do this anymore. So then the post-credit scene, he finds Terry and he's like, And all of us fans would be like, oh my God, he's going to be Batman Beyond. And that would be a handing over the mantle.
And do either well, it wouldn't have to be a limited series, but do a series on HBO Max where Michael Keaton, does one season of it. Dude. Mentoring,
and then you could, a movie, a series.
If you're not already doing that, DC, that's a good idea.
Man, that's a good idea. Because I feel like Keaton would do it.
I do too.
I think he would be on board. Dude.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
The amount of full circle that would be for Keaton and us fans, where he would, because at that point he would literally be Batman in the sense to where he was Batman, and now he's handing over Batman, just like Batman did in the comic books. Oh man, that would solidify him as the single greatest Batman today. Yeah. A lot of people already think that, but I think if he did that, even people who didn't think that would be like, no, freaking Kevin Conroy is, or no, Affleck is. You'd have to be like, no, it's Keaton.
I think definitely it's fitting because he is without question the most iconic.
But also,
as far as Batman goes.
Yeah. And I was looking at him the other day. He was just on a talk show or something like that. But why is it that he's not that big of a guy? He's 5'9", 5'10".
He's a little guy.
But why is he so intimidating? There's something about his eyes and his face. They're like, Okay, I'll do whatever you say.
He's got that. This is a person you don't mess with.
Right,
eyes.
the crazy, like, you know something.
His eyebrows come to a point too. You know, anybody whose eyebrows come to a point, just let that person be.
But even in his old, as he's gotten older, I feel like he's way more intimidating now than he was in his prime as Batman.
That's funny.
So anyway, we can go on and on, Tim, but I think we need to wrap this up.
Yeah, the point is that because we went completely Batman. The point is DC Fandome is going to be fun. There's a lot of things that we're going to see there. A lot we're going to get from it. We're going to be covering it here on the show.
We'll have an entire podcast running it down.
As always, we'll be talking about that and bringing our thoughts and opinions about what happened and what was revealed there.
That's going to be a long podcast. There's going to be lots to talk about.
Yeah, and we'll cover it on social media and stuff like that as well. But we'll be back here to talk to you guys about it as soon as we know anything.
Just think about it. Like, man, you got I'm doing this for like the third time, but the Batman, Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods.
We didn't even touch on the fact that you briefly see Black Adam.
Yeah, no, I said it earlier.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, well, we didn't elaborate on it at all because we went straight to Batman.
Aquaman, Gotham Knights, freaking. That doesn't even count all the TV shows and surprise announcements. Because I will end on this. There is a rumor. This is a rumor. It's probably not going to happen, but there is a rumor floating around that Henry Cavill will announce a sequel to The Man of Steel. Possibly Man of Tomorrow.
I want to know where that rumor came from.
I don't know, but if it's true, Tim, can you imagine that's how you think they're going to end out with Batman? But they're like, now let's go over to Metropolis. You see Henry, as soon as you see Henry Cavill, everyone's going to be like, ah! And then he's like, yeah, 2023.
If that happens at that point, I will be convinced that someone at DC is watching and listening to what we say here on the podcast.
Dude.
Because that's what we've been screaming for is like, what are you doing with Henry Cavill? You got him sitting there, get us some Superman.
I feel like we're going to get a Superman announcement. Now, whether that's Michael B. Jordan as an alternate version of Superman, like Val Zod or something, or Henry Cavill in a sequel to Man of Steel. I think they have to at least do one big Superman announcement.
Something, you would think.
Or at least
they're really promoting the crap out of Superman and Lois, which we haven't talked about also, and I did watch the finale. I think you did too, right?
I haven't finished it.
You haven't finished it?
I have like 2 or 3 episodes left.
Oh, wow.
I was waiting for it to go on HBO Max, and now it's on there, so I got to finish it, yeah.
Yeah, so but they've been touting that a lot. And it was definitely a serviceable and good first season, I would say.
I love
it had its ups and downs.
I loved the aspect they approached with this series where the father
Superman's
side,
a dad.
He's a dad, but we'll save that.
We'll save that for another day. But definitely, I hope we get something Superman beyond Superman and Lois out of this DC Fandome. But we'll see. It's going to be a busy day for sure.
Indeed. But with all that ranting out of the way, guys, we'll see you next time when we talk about DC Fandome.
Pretty much.